So Matt, I wanted us to just have a quick conversation. We had the budget recently, obviously the long-awaited Labour budget, and it was another one of those events we seem to have a lot of over the last few years where, whether it's Brexit, whether it's COVID, whatever it is, there's something where people are going, oh, I'm going to wait and see.
Yeah.
And it's happened. I don't think there were any crazy, nasty surprises in there, really, and it's just another reminder to kind of keep calm and carry on and not plan your move around external things that you have no control over.
Absolutely right. I think there's a few things in there, but nothing that directly impacted the property market per se. I mean, your second home stamp duty part of it increased from 3 to 5%, and that obviously adds quite a bit extra on. The fact that that was immediate with its turnover as well will probably bring into question the thoughts as to whether people do a buy-to-let or don't do a buy-to-let immediately. But if it's here to stay and people want an additional asset, then it's a charge that's going to factor in. But I think very much from our side, we did see a little bit of a quietening over the last sort of week to 10 days, just whilst people were waiting to understand what was going to come from it. It's obvious that they needed to do what they needed to do. I respect that. It's tough decisions. I feel like we've just been susceptible to so many tough things over the past 5 years. Hopefully there will be shoots at some point, but property market's pretty good at the moment, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And it'll be interesting to see how inquiries do change now that we've had that mini budget.
Yeah.
And the next thing is going to be Christmas, and then before we know it, will be into the new year. And I know we said a year ago we felt like this year prices would be steady, and then next year they'll tick up again. So so far I think we're looking pretty good.
We are, and that was it was more of a calculated guess based on factors that we felt were going to be imposed throughout the year. But nothing this year's had any detrimental effect to that, what we thought was actually going to happen. It's exactly done that. We've had different properties achieving a little bit more than we thought they would. We've had other properties maybe not achieving quite what we thought they would as well. But generally speaking, it's been a pretty solid year for us, and I do think there'll be some gains on market value and property next year. I don't think early part of next year. I think probably midway through the year, once interest rates come down a little bit more. I saw a stat a little while ago from one of the banks or an economist saying that they felt like the interest rates were going to drop to about 3.5%, the Bank of England rate that is, by the end of 2025. So it could mean that next year is quite a pivotal time for them to be done incrementally, but quite regular. And that will obviously make a benefit with the swap rates and the banks, and then the lending will be a little bit cheaper, hopefully.
Yeah, because I had a quick look actually at the swap rates yesterday, just with everything that was going on.
Okay,
and I think they're kind of 3.5. I think that they were 3.5. Now they're maybe 3.8, somewhere thereabouts, sort of like that 2 to 5 year kind of range. So ticked up ever so slightly since a month ago, but less than they were a year ago. And considering the base rate's 5%. Yeah, you got swap rates at 3.5, 3.7. Yeah.
The banks are still keen to lend money, aren't they? Banks are still keen to lend money. They've got their numbers to hit, and if they haven't lent as much as they need to, by the time they come to their financial end, you'll actually see rates come down even further because they'll need to spend the money.
Yeah, and even just for us being in the trenches a little bit, we don't have any problems with down valuations, really.
No.
We've had a few 5% deposit deals recently.
Yeah.
They've all been fine.
Yes, they have.
I haven't noticed, or I certainly haven't felt from the lenders or the brokers I've been speaking with, that there's any nervousness to lend at all.
No, it's still very happy to lend. I think it's just for the consumer, the buyer actually is just the only person that's probably worried as per the pounds and pence on a monthly basis. That when it was like 5.5%, 6%, I get it totally. But when you can get a mortgage product, which you could have done a couple of weeks ago at 3.77, that's a more palatable level, and that makes everything feel a little bit more comfortable. I don't think you'll see anything below 3% for a good period of time based on what you'll borrow the money at. So I think now's the right time to do it. And I think if you're on the fence and you're thinking about it, especially for first-time buyers, if you're looking to buy your first place, you've got the relief on the stamp duty up until April as well, haven't you? So up to 425, and it drops down to 300. So try and take a little bit of an advantage of that part, because that £125,000 difference equates to about £6,500 in stamp duty. So I think it's actually really important if the first time buyer is out there thinking I'm going to wait, maybe don't wait too long.
Yeah, because for saving is up to 425. You mean
Correct.
That's where the £6,000 comes from?
Yeah, because it's going to go from 425 down to 300. So for any second home buyer, so like if you wanted to buy another house or I wanted to buy another house, having sold our own, it's going to go from 250 down to 125, and it's 5% on anything from there up to like 900 or something. So it's a good opportunity for first-time buyers to find their first house without spending a fortune on it next year and paying more stamp duty.
Yeah, because that ends, doesn't it, at the end of March next year?
Correct, yeah.
And actually, if you leave it until after Christmas, it'll be too late, probably.
Yeah. So
now's the time where you can maybe benefit from a lesser stamp duty.
Exactly that.
And I was thinking about this yesterday. The stamp duty, the 125 bracket getting abolished, I think was actually the one gift that Liz Truss and Kwasi gave us in that mini budget. I think it was that budget
was it really?
where that came into play. And I was thinking yesterday, actually, they've taken a lot of stick.
For all the advantages that they gave us. Oh my God.
They've taken a lot of stick, but I remember that 125 stamp duty bracket, which saves you, I think, £2,500 off of the sale. With that 125 bracket not being there, you save £2,500. That bracket will come back in after April.
Yeah.
So I just felt like Liz and Kwasi should maybe have a little bit of love from the property market.
I don't think they do.
Unpopular opinion.
No, I'm a very unpopular opinion. I didn't like them at all after everybody decided not to buy houses for 6 months after that happened because interest rates were high. So no.
Sorry to bring that up.
Yeah, sorry to bring that up.
Thought I'd drop that in for what it's worth.
But generally, I think the budget is one of what we expected. There's been lots of changes in various different areas of life, and we're just going to have to get on with it. In truth, it's very much just get on with it type of movement. And I think the property market's still good. Swap rates for banks are still good. Lending is still out there. People aren't over. The property prices haven't escalated beyond what's possible for most people to be able to afford. Some will think differently, of course, but certainly the market's still moving, and we've been really successful over the past couple of months. And I think for the next year, it will be quite a nice place to be in the Wokingham estate agency market.
Let's bring on 2025.
Absolutely right.
Absolutely. Cool. I just one thing before we sign off. I was just going back to the stamp duty changes which came in the other day. I'm just keen to get your thoughts on what you think the impact will be with the second home stamp duty going from 3% to 5%, because on the one hand I think, well, that's a lot of money. If I was buying an investment property last week, now I've got to find another 2%. That seems a lot.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, I think, well, if the investment's not viable over 2%, then maybe it's not a good investment.
Yeah, quite right.
I don't know.
Quite right. I think people will look at it based on their term and their level of risk as well. Because some will look at an investment strategy and buy a property on the basis they do it on a buy-to-let for maybe 2, 3, 5 years. I think most investments now really need to be considered over a longer period than that.
Yeah.
More so because the agreement fees and bits and pieces you pay for a mortgage on a buy-to-let are much more expensive. So I do think that there'll be more of a tightening of the belts, probably looking for a better deal. So if you've probably got a house out there that you think's a house that would be sold to a buy-to-let investor, it might not be unless it's cheap enough, which everyone will find really uncomfortable.
That's the truth, though, isn't it? When people say to us, "Oh, this house would appeal to an investor," it's like, "Oh, if it's cheap enough."
Well, yeah, exactly. And no one wants their property to be cheap, do they? Because they want the most from it. So I do think that there's going to be an opportunity for buy-to-let investors out there, but I do also think that the first-time buyer market will continue to flourish next year, and yeah, I think the stamp duty for the extra, I think it'll affect a lot of our non-resident landlords. So the buyers that come in we've had a lot of buyers come over from Hong Kong recently, lovely people, but they often have a second home in Hong Kong, and that obviously affects their ability to then only pay a smaller margin of stamp duty. So that might have a bit of a detrimental effect to what they may offer. But I think there's lots of different variables. I think if you want to make it work, you'll make it work.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. And 2% isn't enough to not make it work, but it is enough to make it
a little bit more uncomfortable than it was yesterday.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. And I also think, to the Hong Kong buyer point, I've noticed some of them, I think they paid strong prices sometimes. And I think maybe they've afforded to do that because they're obviously moving a lot of money around. And I wonder if this will just make it a bit tighter.
Maybe.
They'll just be crunching those numbers a little bit harder than they would have done before.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think sometimes when you overpay for something, not meaningfully, but maybe pay a little bit more, it overinflates the market to the others, as it makes it more difficult for the locals to buy houses at the values where they should be sat. But I think if everything levels out as it should do, everybody have a level playing field next year, and it'll be quite a nice place to be. And I don't think prices will jump astronomically. I just really don't think they will. And I think interest rates will continue to be level, if not drop a little bit, which everybody feels reassured by.
Yeah, so bring it on.
Yeah,
2025.
Bring it on, 2025.
Let's go.
Let's do it.